All right, so I got a good question the other day from a user looking to create custom hover states for drag objects. So the idea is that as the object is dragged over a correct or incorrect, the object would change states and then also change back to its normal state when it's dragged back over the rest of the slide. Now we can easily do that, right, with drop correct targets when we drop the object, right? That's a built-in state, but it takes a couple triggers to do this if you want to control it on the dragging. So let's take a look at how that works. All right, so here we are on the slide, and we have a object right here that we'd like to use as the draggable object, and then we have two larger drop targets, one of which will be correct and the other will be incorrect. So the first thing we want to do is just customize the drag object. We do that by coming down to the states, and if we click Edit States and add a new state, you'll see that we have already, right, the built-in states for drop correct and drop incorrect. Well, we don't want to drop it before we know whether or not that's a correct target. And then we also have a drag over, but that's just going to indicate a single state, give you a single state whenever you drag it over either of the two targets, right? So what we want to do is create a custom state, and we'll just call this one drag over correct. And again, custom states can be named anything you like, so go ahead and give it a name that's most meaningful to you or your project. So here's my custom state name. Click Add, and let's just customize this and make it green, right? Good for correct. And let's make a new state, and we'll call it drag over incorrect. All right, so these are custom states. These are not built-in states. These are states that we're creating in Storyline, and I'll customize the color there as red. So these two are our two custom states. Click Done Editing, and now we just need to add a trigger. So I could work with the convert to freeform. We haven't set the convert to freeform up here. Doesn't matter if we are, or we can just work with it as just an interaction without any scoring. I'm just going to keep it like that for this example. But again, the same technique is going to apply if you're working with one of the freeform drag and drop activities. So we come over here to the triggers panel, and what is it we want to do? Well, we want to change the state, right? And this time we want to change the state of an object, and that's going to be our drag object, right? We want to change that state to correct, right? We want to change it to correct when, not when timeline starts, but when the object is dragged over. So we have to go all the way down here on the bottom. When the object is dragged over the drop correct state, right? And the object here is the drag object. So when this drag object is dragged over the correct state, change that state of the drag object to correct, which is what we have right here, and on this target for the correct. So go ahead and click OK. That adds one state. Now we need to add one more trigger for the incorrect state. So we can copy it and paste it and then just modify it, right? So double click it. We want to change it not to the correct state, but this time to incorrect when the object is dragged over the drop incorrect, right? So change it to incorrect when it's over the incorrect, and change it to correct when it's over the correct. So just like it would work with the custom, the built-in drop target, drop correct and drop incorrect states, but this time we're working with hovers. So click OK, and let's preview our interaction. Automatically makes this a draggable object. Move it over the correct. There it is. Now when I move it back out, you'll notice that it still stays green. Move it over the incorrect target, and that keeps it at red, and move it back out. So we have to do one final change, and that is to add sort of like a catch-all over here underneath all these objects that'll reset this object, this drag object, to normal state whenever it leaves these two targets. And the easiest way to do that is with a hotspot. So a hotspot, just a big giant invisible button. We'll put one of those on all over the slide right here. And right now it's covering everything. What I want to do is move that all the way to the bottom. I want that below everything. And you see over here in the triggers panel, by default, hotspots like to assume you're going to add a layer. We're not going to show a layer. I'm going to delete that. And what I want to do now is just change the state of this object back to normal whenever it's dragged anywhere over this green area, right? So we do that by adding another trigger that says change the state of, and again, it's our drag object, back to normal when, go all the way down here to the drag op events, hotspot. right? So that's a pretty big area for it to cover, but that's what we want it to do. Go ahead and click OK. And now let's preview our interaction. So here it is. Drag it over the correct, drag it out, see how it changes back to blue and red, and drags back to the normal. Now the final thing we may need to change here on the hotspot, depending on your hotspot, is see how that has this option here for show hand cursor on hover? That just gives it away that there's a big button here on the back. So we don't want that. So just disable the hand cursor so that the cursor doesn't change whenever you just move your mouse around the background. But that's how you can change the custom hover states for dragging correct and incorrect in Storyline using just a couple simple triggers.